as always, you start from a value proposition and you try to deliver that value proposition to your client. In case of the farmers, our value proposition is that our farmer knows what he will pay because he pays per installation and he pays a certain fee for services. Why is that important? Because the farmer wants to have a hassle-free operation. That's what the farmer wants. He wants to know what he is going to pay, which he currently doesn't have control over because he does it externally. Here he can invest in our installation, and he wants to have it worry-free. So for that, we do all the services. We do maintenance. We make sure that the chemicals that are made, that they are collected. So we basically do everything for the client. If there's a hiccup, then we make sure that we are there and that the farmer doesn't have to interfere. So that way we deliver our value proposition to the farmer, and we charge per installation, but we also charge a yearly service fee. Which farmer is interesting to us? Not all farmers are our clients. The farmers that are the most interesting to us are, well, in fact, they're the only possible client, or the ones that have a manure surplus. If they don't have a manure surplus, then it doesn't make sense for us to treat their manure surplus. In Flanders, that's about 65% of the pig farmers and about 10% of the cattle farmers. How do we reach them? Well, since we work on an individual basis, we place an installation there and we charge a yearly fee. And the fact that every farm is a little bit different, not all farmers have the same amount of pigs or the same amount of cattle, we plan to go on a direct sales basis. It's very important that we have this close contact with the farmer, that he trusts us, that he knows what his specific return on investment is. So every time we go there, we actually calculate the return on investment for the farmer specifically. We do the maintenance and we do the assembly. That's very clear. So how do we then approach these farmers? Well, not only through the direct sales, but we also do some marketing approaches. And the ways we do that is very much relying on word of mouth. Farmers are very much talking to each other. Once we go to one farmer, then or we go to two farmers, then automatically everybody in the region already knows. So that's very clear. But we're also planning to advertise in well, basically specialized magazines. We go to farmers fairs. We talk to the farmers union. That's very important. So that more or less determines the revenue side. Who is our client? How are we going to approach our client? And how do we tackle that? Then, of course, the cost side is very much related to that. If you want to go for a direct sales approach and you want to do service in-house and you want to know your installation very well, then you also have to do assembly in-house. So all of these things we do together. We don't do the separate making of the parts that are in our installation. You know very well what has to be in our installation, but for that we work with key partners. That's not our core. We don't want to let's say, make consumables. However, we do assemble these consumables ourselves, because then we have control over the quality of the installation, and we can make sure that if our team is going to place it on site, that it fulfills the quality requirements. So those are in fact the key resources that we need. We need our salesmen, we need our assemblymen, we need to have people that do repairs and people that are there when the farmer has a problem. And then if you look at some other resources that we need, besides the partners for the suppliers, what we also need is, of course, our intellectual property. That's very important, because there's some aspects in our installation that are not very easily copied and that we have protected in patents. And of course, what is very important is funds. Of course, the farmer will pay upfront, or he will pay a part upfront, but especially the let's say the development cost part of that has to be regained, and for that, of course, we need some funding, which is nice as a spin-off that you're still closely linked to university. A lot of items we of course discussed, because your value proposition is very much related to the market that you're in, but also how you deliver that value proposition to your client. So we discussed the options of leasing installations, of actually selling them, of having the service included or not included. And depending on the market that you go to, those will be very different. For example, if you go to a developing country market instead of the mature market, it doesn't make sense to do everything yourself. It doesn't make sense to do the direct sales yourselves, because it will never work. I mean, the market is just too huge. It's too decentralized. So there, your partners are going to be much more important. There, you're going to have to work with a completely different model in terms of either joint ventures or licensing or whatever. Especially in the farmers market, you really see that this customer intimacy needs to be there when you work on the farm. However, if you look at the farmers market, we could also think of other options. We could think of going to the current manure treatment installations that are there. There's about 100 manure treatment installations in Flanders that are much larger. We could also go to them and sell our installation to them. If you look at it from a business point of view, for us, that would be less interesting, because then we would sell larger installations, and everybody knows that if you go to smaller installations, well, the cost, of course, becomes higher. But if you build a service model there, then of course, there's much more interesting revenue in the service model. So we debated quite a bit on about that, and it's really through these customer interactions that we came up with this is the best way of approaching this. But in a developing country market, it will look very different. But that's, I think, very logical.